Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Changemakers LA podcast presented by LISC LA. The Changemakers LA podcast is a tribute to the people and the policies that make LA neighborhoods good places to live, work, and play. I'm Erica Webster. I'm a program officer at LISC LA, and I work on our alternatives to incarceration projects, specifically working with community-based organizations in Los Angeles who provide clinical and case management services to justice-involved Angelenos. On today's episode, we're going to talk about diversion programs, which are interventions aimed at preventing or reducing a person's contact with law enforcement or the criminal legal system, and instead connecting them with health and social services such as mental health treatment, substance use treatment, and housing. We'll be discussing the positive impacts of these programs as well as the challenges from both the participant and social service provider perspectives, and also hearing from our guests about what helps people be really successful in these programs. Today, I'm joined by Tanu Ah You and Pat Sellers. Tanu is a case manager at Transformational Living Homes, which is a sober living and recovery program in Long Beach. He's also a board member at Project ALOFA, another loving opportunity for all, which advocates for Asian and Pacific Islanders experiencing incarceration and reentry. Tanu is a fierce advocate for the formerly incarcerated LGBTQIA+ community, as well as the registrant community, who he works with now in his capacity as a case manager. He's also a recent graduate of LA City College and Long Beach City College in the field of addiction studies and behavioral sciences. And he's currently a junior at Cal State Long Beach and is studying American Studies. And then, as I mentioned, we're also joined by Pat Sellers, who is a former analyst for Farmers and Merchants Banks, and she's worked with Tanu at Project ALOFA and has been their board chair for 4 years. She's a board member of her church in Cerritos and has been a Sunday school teacher, and she believes that there are many who deserve more than second chances, and this has been a major reason for her advocacy with seeing the formerly incarcerated folks transform into the men and women they're destined to be. And she's also an old friend of Tanu's, and she's kind of joining us today in that capacity, and as just an advocate and part of the support network of Tanu. So we're so happy to have you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So beyond your professional experience in the field of social services and working with those who've experienced incarceration, Tanu has also experienced the criminal legal system firsthand and is actually participating in a diversion program right now. So I first just want to say thank you for your generosity in sharing your story with us, and then being willing to kind of discuss your personal experience with diversion programs, and then your professional experience in serving folks who are in similar programs. So I want to talk more about the diversion programs themselves and Tanu's and Pat's experience with them. But before we get into that, I'd love to just hear a little bit more about you, Tanu, and if you would be willing to tell us a little bit of your background, your story, the work that you do now, and also just how you're doing with school.
Thank you, Erica and LISC. It's an honor to be here. So I am in a better place today. I am in a space where I am proud of where I'm at with my journey. Prior to this, I was in a state where I was going in and out of jail. I was homeless on the streets. I was going through my addiction, relapse after relapse, and it was just a vicious cycle that was keeping me incarcerated. But I'm at a better place today. I just graduated from Los Angeles City College and Long Beach City College with emphasis in addiction studies and behavioral sciences. And I'm now attending Cal State Long Beach as a junior, majoring in American Studies. And I'm a proud member of the Project Rebound organization that's on Cal State Long Beach's campus.
Thank you so much for sharing. And then Pat, do you want to talk a little bit about how you both know each other?
Sure, I can do that. So, again, thank you for having us. And Tanu and I met many years ago through a mutual friend. And because I tend to help different organizations, at this time in my life, I was helping a middle school volleyball team, and that's how I met Tanu. And knowing how I had connections and things like that, he came and spoke to me about Project ALOFA and getting that started. And that's basically what brought us together, was being able to start Project ALOFA and the journey that that brought. I've been, I consider him family. We've been very close. I've seen him relapse many times, but he's still someone dear to my heart, and I love him unconditionally. And I'm here to support him in everything that he does. And we've just been very close, like brother and sister, for over 10 years now. It doesn't seem like it, but it has been. And I just love seeing where he's come from and where he is now, and how focused he is on making a better life for not only himself, but for other people in the community as well. I just love his heart. And he's just such a good person. So that's pretty much where Tanu and I started, and how I've been a part of his journey, for a while now.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, and as we go through the questions, we'd love to hear from you as someone who's in his support network, about what it was like to be supportive, how you interacted with the programs, like the challenges you saw from your perspective. So
Okay.
As we go, if you have anything to add, we'd love to hear it. So before we get into the meat of the interview, I want to just go over a quick introduction about what diversion programs are for anyone listening who might not be familiar. As I mentioned, they are interventions seeking to reduce a person's interaction with the criminal legal system, and ideally connect those same folks with services that they might need in terms of health, mental health, housing, whatever it is. And there are a number of different types of diversion programs, and the term diversion programs gets used in different ways, but just generally speaking, there's usually some sort of incentive in place where if a person completes the program, then there are no further criminal legal actions taken. So for example, there are some programs where law enforcement connects people to services in lieu of arrest. Sometimes law enforcement connects folks to services after arrest, but before prosecutors file charges in court. There are some court programs where the judge says, if you complete this program in the community, then your case will be dismissed later down the line. And then there are also alternative sentencing programs where you might accept a conviction, but you can complete the program in the community as opposed to being sentenced to jail or prison. So even acknowledging that so much needs to change on the front end to dismantle the system of mass incarceration, ending the criminalization of unhoused people, drug use, and also building up alternative crisis response programs so that police aren't always responding to mental health crisis calls, for example. Diversion programs are still a really important and helpful tool to create pathways out of the criminal legal system. So that's why we're focusing on it today. But we also want to talk about the programs themselves, the promising practices, and also what can be improved. So Tanu, in your case, you're participating in a court program actively as of today. And I'm curious to learn more about what that experience has been like for you, both the positive experiences and what the program has helped with, as well as the things that you think could be improved in programs like these. And so I think the best way to go about doing this would probably be to walk through how the program works chronologically, and I'll kind of ask along the way what worked well, what could have gone better. And Pat, I'll definitely turn to you and feel free to jump in when there's something relevant to your experience as someone supporting someone through these programs. So I'd like to begin with what the experience was like in jail and court. And so I'm hoping you can kind of set the scene and describe the experience of where you were when you were first approached about the diversion programs.
Yeah, so I had been given the opportunity to, I guess, be diverted into another program when I was waiting on arraignment. And it was still a blur. I didn't know exactly what the program entailed. All I know is I was approached by a district attorney. I was approached by a mental health clinician, and they informed me that I had qualified for the diversion program. And so at that point, my mind, I was thinking, yes, I just want to get out of here. Give me a program, let me get out. And that's all I wanted to do was just, yes. I just said yes to anything just to get out. Not really considering it to be a gift, and some serious making up of my mind that I needed to get the help that I needed. And so the clinician did a quick few questions and asked me a few questions, and I answered yes, that I did have mental health issues. It was obvious that I was still undergoing psychosis with my drug use. And they asked if I was homeless, which I had been. I was homeless on the streets, and I didn't care. I was very, very filthy. I was very dirty. Jail was actually a blessing for me to be in jail because my loved ones knew where I was at, and I was actually receiving meals and some sleep that I needed. And so they brought me back into the courtrooms, I think 2 weeks later, and that's when I met the team that I was going to be working with for my diversion program.
Can you talk about how long it took between being told about the program and being released from jail?
So after the second week I came in, it was a bit more clear. I was a bit more stable. I had been medicated. I had some sleep and rest. And I had the opportunity to really understand what the clinicians were seeing was that we needed Tanu to be better, not just out of jail, but Tanu needed to get better, get under his right medications with mental health, and we were going to find housing for him. And that's when they really shared the incentive for me to stay in this program was to finally be housed and no longer living on the streets, and to be under my right medication, and to be a sober man. So all of these things came clear about 2 months in. And so I accepted the program. And upon acceptance of the program, I was informed that I would have to wait for a bed to be available, but COVID hit. So when COVID hit, I was stuck inside jail for another, I think it was close to 6 months. Pat may know, but I think it was close to 6 months because of COVID. I was waiting for a bed for that long. And so I was isolated in the medical unit, waiting for a bed to open up.
Right. And so I just to clarify some of the things you're referencing, the program you're involved in now, the goal is to eventually, upon release from jail, there's an interim housing component, and then the long-term goal is to connect clients with permanent supportive housing, right?
That's correct.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then I also just want to return to, in talking with you before, you mentioned how I think it's important to highlight like how the path to these programs can be so based on individual choices. And so you mentioned your first public defender wasn't necessarily very supportive of diversion, and then you had a different one who ultimately connected you. And Pat, I think you were around for this experience. Would you be able to speak on that?
Yes. I never was able to go to court because it was during COVID and they wouldn't allow outsiders to come in. But the feedback that I was getting from Tanu was that this particular public defender um, felt that he was a lost cause and that he shouldn't get this program. He shouldn't get this opportunity to actually um, get the help he needed to prevent himself from going back to jail. Because that's what this program is. It's not just getting him housing, it's providing him multiple services so that he wouldn't go back to jail. So I just know that with the first one that he had, um, he wasn't really looking out for Tanu's best interest, but somewhere along the way, he got a new district. I mean, a new public defender, and that's when the doors started opening for him. So I think it's important to, when someone is going through these types of things, that how do I want to say this? Is that someone representing you may not always have your best interest. And we have to be, and in Tanu's case, he needed to be looking out for himself. Uh, Not that public defenders don't want to do the best for their clients, but in his case, that was his struggle. You know, when you have someone who's not willing to help or think that you qualify or that you're just a lost cause and you need to go to prison, how is that beneficial for that person's mental health, their state of mind, and being able to go out in society and be successful? So, you know, for Tanu and I, who have a strong faith, um, you know, we just saw doors open that had been closed, and we could only um, give thanks to the Lord for opening those doors for him, because they had things not changed, he would not be where he's at right now. So I'm very thankful that the doors were opened for him to be able to qualify for this program that he's in.
Thank you for sharing that, Pat. Tana, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, you know, Pat, Pat's exactly right. You know, I failed to mention how that public defender was really all about the punitive side and really wanted me to go to prison. And there was no thought put into the rehabilitative side of Tanu. That I was just this and that, and this is where I needed to do, this is where I needed to go, and this is what I needed to do, and it was all punitive. And so it was very, for me, it was a blessing to have this public defender come in and see differently, and say, and to see that he approached me with, hey, you actually have this amount of time that you've been good, and focus on the good time versus the bad things that I've done. And so that changed the narrative of everything. And that I actually broke down. I called Pat and I said, when would you ever find another public defender who praises you on doing well in between stints? So yeah, this has been that he was definitely a blessing.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that part of the story. let's transition to talking about the program itself. So again, the program that you're participating in provides housing and then case management services aimed at connecting clients to mental health, substance use services, any other social services that might be missing. And I would like to talk with you about your experience with each of these services, beginning with housing. So if you could kind of explain, upon release from jail, what was like the setup of the different types of housing that you lived in as part of the program?
So I was released to an agency in downtown Los Angeles, and when I got there, Pat met me there and dropped off some bedding, some clothes for me, and I was greeted by the case manager and the house manager, who gave me the rundown of the rules, and basically that was it. The rundown of the rules, and I was on blackout for I think 30 days. 30 days when I first got there, and my mind was not set on staying there. My mind was not set on staying there. I had already made up my mind that I wanted to leave, but I never shared that with Pat, and I was just overwhelmed with what was happening at the home, and it was definitely affecting me. And so the prevalent use of drugs and just the lack in enforcing policies and procedures there, it made it too easy to lie and get away with things. And so that was my first experience with my first house. And then I got moved. We all moved to another home because our agency moved homes. So we had to pack up and go to another home in downtown Los Angeles. And that's where I took flight. And that's where I left the program. And I relapsed and I went back to jail.
Yeah, I just want to focus in on a couple things you're mentioning. So first of all, do you want to explain what blackout is?
Sure. Blackout is when you're not able to leave the premises. You're able to use your phone. You're able to do everything in programming, whatever's there, whatever's available. You're to do, but you're not able to leave the program.
And the purpose of it is sort of to get accustomed to the routine of the household.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to hold on something you mentioned in terms of the drug use at the house, and just highlighting how many different types of resources are needed for different people's individual needs. So for you, I'm kind of hearing that you needed a sober living environment, whereas the environment that you were staying at in this house was maybe not that. But at the same time, there are others who might benefit from more of a harm reduction approach where drug use isn't necessarily prohibited as much as kind of monitored and analyzed. And the goal to be not to penalize someone for drug use and send them right back into the justice system. But all that to say is that that environment didn't work for you, but you didn't really have another option. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say. When I got there, I knew what was happening. As soon as I got in, my roommate was there and it was out on the bed. So I knew already I was going to use, because the addict that I am, I was going to use. And keeping in mind that I knew that this could potentially put me in jail, I did it anyways. And we talk about harm reduction. But for me, I'm one of these addicts that can't do harm reduction. I'll be right back out on the streets, naked, running up and down, and just being a terrible, terrible menace to our community. And so for me, having been rearrested was another blessing in disguise, because it could have been dead by now.
Yeah, it's really heavy. I mean, I think a theme of this conversation so far is the need for multiple chances, both, you know, from the perspective of the original counsel that you had, and then also in this program, even though you were rearrested, you're now back in the program, right?
Mm-hmm.
So an important element of the program is granting people multiple opportunities to succeed. And I'm just curious, like how important that was for you throughout your experience.
Yeah, having had multiple opportunities has given me the chance to be where I'm at today. You know, I needed that last you know, console by the judge when he said, "This is it. You know, this is you're going to go to prison if you don't get your life straight." And I took the recommendations of the district attorney, as well as the public defender, as well as my FSP team and my ICMS managers. And so I started outpatient with LA CADA. And that's when I received the treatment that I needed to do. And it was 1 year outpatient, which was what I needed. And I received the support system. I received the encouragement that I needed to be who I am today. And it was a breath of fresh air because I was able to meet with them Tuesdays and Thursdays at the house because of COVID. And then because of COVID, and then I was able to go out on outings with a sober group on meeting nights and to like the Dodger games. But I had a whole new support group.
Would I be able to address the multiple
Please.
chances? Okay. So from my perspective, Tono did get multiple, but when he came in to that house, he was told, if you don't come back at night, you're out of the program. And there were a couple of times when he didn't come back. But I can tell you that his team called me and said, "Hey, have you seen him?" And I would be like, "No, but let me see if I can get in touch with him." They were more concerned for his well-being than him not being in the house and not coming back into the house, because he just disappeared. And these were times when he had relapsed. But what really affected me in a positive way was that their care for him as a person and not as some drug addict on the street that just left. They really cared about him enough to, "Hey, if you know where he's at, call me and I'll go personally get him." They were willing to do that. When he sobered up enough and he called his caseworker, they sent an Uber to pick him up and bring him home. This isn't just a program that says that they care, they do care. And it is an amazing, you know, he didn't share everything he was told about the program, just what was important to him at the time he was offered it. But the way this program is set up is that the individuals in the program have nothing to worry about. At least they say, "You need clothes, we can order you clothes. You need food, we're here to feed you. We want to give you everything that you need, that you don't need money to go out and work unless it's time for you within your journey to go and do that. They offered schooling, that if you want to go to college, we will pay for that. And he had these experiences. So I can say that, though, yes, it is a program of multiple chances. It truly is. But it's because they care enough to invest in that person and want them to be able to come back and start over, and never once did any of his team give up on him. And I can honestly say that whatever his experiences were in the house had nothing to do with his team and the team wanting him to be successful. So I just wanted to share that part.
That's wonderful. That sounds like everything we want.
Right.
I'm going to kind of roughly transition to some other things I want to make sure we have time to talk about. And I think then we can return to some of the points you're raising, Pat. But so apart from housing, the other services that the program is meant to connect participants with is substance use treatment and mental health if needed. So I want to talk about kind of access to substance use treatment for you, Tanu. From the point of being released from jail and in the house, I'm just curious, like, what the experience of enrolling in substance use treatment was like.
Yeah, so the team worked effortlessly in terms of giving me options with substance use treatment, whether it be intensive outpatient, residential. I ran away from the first residential. I'm not going to lie. I ran away and they took me back into the home. And that's when they decided intensive outpatient, and having them come to visit me would be the best idea since I was still going to school. So that helped out, being able to find a compromise with how they were going to devise and develop my treatment plan. They realized how important school was to me, and how disciplined I was when I was in school. And so the moments when I did relapse, I'd come back and I'd still do well in school. So they decided to work on this hybrid plan with me in terms of getting the outpatient and my school schedule. And that's when it was very, very strict. It was Tanu had Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday outpatient. Monday, Wednesday, Friday school, Tuesday, Thursday outpatient. Saturday was your meetings, and Sunday would be my faith day. And so that's when my whole life turned around, is when they offered me SED treatment, and then they upped my medications for my mental health. So finding and tapering and finally titrating me to the correct dosage. And I accepted the shots that I get once a month, and it was a game changer. It was a game changer. There was night and day with me, knowing that I was on my medication, knowing that they titrated me to the correct amount, because I cried when I was with my sister, with Pat. I say, Pat, I'm taking too much. I don't want to be a guinea pig. I just don't want to take this just because they're offering it. And so they listened to me, and I was very grateful that they did. And so now I'm on two medications that I love, and I feel like it has helped me tremendously become a better person.
To follow up with what Tanu said, he was leery of taking all this medication. He would tell me how it felt, and I told him, you need to speak up and explain how it's making you feel, that you don't feel yourself, because there are so many other medications out there. One of them will fit what your needs are. So again, it's important to be an advocate. Other people don't know your body. They don't know how medications are affecting you. And you have to speak up and say, is there something else? Because this isn't working for me. Regardless if you are incarcerated or not incarcerated, I feel it's very important to speak up when it comes to medications. And I supported him in doing that. But we did have conversations about the best way to approach it, because if you're going to come in and be stubborn, they're going to insist. So if he would be able to calmly speak to the doctors and explain how he's feeling, then they would have a better understanding of why that medication was or was not best for him.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And just to clarify, we've kind of transitioned into talking about both substance use treatment and mental health treatment. I think that there's a couple of things I'm hearing from these stories, which is, number one, I'm curious, well, here's a question based on what I'm hearing, is kind of how long did it take for you and your team to figure out kind of the combination of treatments that worked for you? Both, how long did it take for them to devise the schedule where you're in school and you're also doing substance use treatment, and then also figuring out the kind of medication combination that made you feel like yourself?
It took about 6 to 8 months.
Wow.
Around 6 to 8 months to really get into my medication regimen. That took about six months. It took about 8 months for them to realize that I needed structure and that I needed to realize what I wanted in life and what was making me happy, and it was school. And being in school and being active again and contributing to my school environment, and had me feeling worthy again. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hearing that amount of time is really fascinating, because I would imagine that it's a pretty relatable experience for folks participating in programs like these to feel unhappy up until the point where they can really figure out what works for them and want to leave, and then do in fact leave. And so the culmination of being granted multiple opportunities to participate alongside like the continuing process of trying to figure out what works best for an individual person, I think like that just comes across so clearly in what you're talking about. Of everything that you've experienced thus far, what do you feel have been the most critical components of you being able to be successful?
Definitely my SED treatment and my mental health, but there was also a mentor that I received from LA Cata, who was an amazing individual, somebody who I saw was me, somebody who was open, an open book, who could share his life, and I just enjoyed every minute being with him. And we got to go to the Dodger game. We got a chance to sit and talk about the days when we were both on Santa Monica Boulevard. But we didn't stay there, but we went there, we felt it, we lived it together, and then we created plans and we created roadways in order for me to become the person who I am and who I've always was meant to be. And that's a kind, loving, and compassionate person. And that's who I saw. And I wanted to be this individual. And every week when he came to see me, it just strengthened my worthiness, and just it made me feel better that there was somebody out there who understood me, and that I could be myself, and that I could be unapologetic.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I mean, I think this is now a good transition into discussing how your lived experience affects how you you see your own work as a case manager serving folks coming out of jail and prison. So just to begin, can you describe the work you do now at Transformational Living Homes?
Yeah, so currently I'm their case manager working with a specific population, the registrant community. And not only the registrant community, but all those who are on the STOP program, 1502 with GEOs. These are all parolees that are being released into our agency.
Great. And can you kind of talk about how your personal experience has shaped how you see yourself as a service provider?
I think being able to understand and having them feel comfortable with where I'm at as a counselor, but not only as a counselor, but as somebody who's a peer. I see this community as my community, and having lived this experience, and understanding the difficulties that arise and the stereotypes that we may encounter, I'm able to sit down and process with my clients. I'm able to sit down and express the truth, uplift them, encourage them, and letting them know that they're loved, but more importantly, that they are someone. I learned from a good friend of mine to always remember that that's someone's mother's child. And that's the way I look at it. Because there's a point when they're broken, and I was broken. And every day I have to tell myself, sorry.
Take your time.
I think that's the hardest part about this job, is trying to separate my hurt, countertransference and transference. But when you think your story was terminally unique and that you're the only one out there that feels that way, and you get to hear that over and over, it takes a toll on you, but at the same time, it reminds me why I've needed and why I do the things that I do. Community gets judged every day, and I know how they just want to feel loved, they just want to feel accepted, and that's my community, and I do this work because I love them, because I understand it. So sorry.
No need to apologize. I just want to say thank you for sharing and feeling comfortable being vulnerable while talking about this. I think just kind of witnessing your genuine emotion just shows how significant what the words you're saying are. And I know there's a lot behind what you're saying. How do you communicate that love and support to the folks that you work with?
I treat everyone as if they were my brother or sister, when they come in here. I treat them with kindness, respect, with love. And it's not about me. It's not about me. It's about them. What can I do to make their day better? What can I do to make it easier for them? And that's how I approach meeting with them every single day. I do have the privilege of understanding some of the difficulties, like having to do your annual checkup. These are specifics that are just for the registrant community. Having to update their addresses and re-register. But I think having insight because I've lived that experience, and I'm still living this experience. It gives me the opportunity to have more insight when I'm working with them and in case managing them.
Are there things that are missing that you wish as a service provider you could provide and as a participant that you could receive?
Um, One thing that I know has always been a worry for me and for many others in this community is permanent supportive housing. The difficulties with finding permanent supportive housing or a place that will accept our community um, has always been at the forefront when I'm working with the clients and even with myself. You know, I'm going 2 years into the program and I'm still not with permanent supportive housing yet, but I'm very hopeful and I know that there is going to be something out there for me. Um, and so I have to be extremely encouraging with and hopeful with the clients that I deal with every day in letting them know that there is a community out there that will help us, will house us, and thankfully I found one home, which is Transformational Living Homes. This is an agency where I know they know housing insecure people are people, and it's a basic right, and it's something that they advocate for every single day, and I just love them to death for that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Pat, is there anything from your perspective that you would add?
At this point, I the only thing I'd like to say is that everybody deserves a second chance. Everybody deserves to be loved. And we need to open our hearts to everyone, not just people in our mind that we think are worthy. With Tanu, his struggles have been, like he said, finding a place that accepts him. And as an example for my children growing up, I taught them you need to look everyone in the eye and say hello because you don't know what they're going through. And when you do that, you're validating them as a person, and everybody wants to be validated as a person. And I don't care what their background is. They could be homeless, they could be a gang person with tattoos all over the place. We still need to acknowledge them as people. And when you look someone in the eye and you say hello to them, you're acknowledging that they have value. And I think it's important that everybody knows that they have value, regardless of what your circumstances have been. We've all had struggles in our lives. And, for Tanu, I love him. I know what his past has been, but that's not who he is. Those are things that happen in his life, but it hasn't shaped him to be a different person. He's a good-hearted person, and I think it's sometimes hard for people to look for the good in people, and I think it's important we look at people's hearts and not what they say or not what they look like on the outside. It's important that we see people for who they really are and what their actions are. Meaning, just because you have an issue with drugs doesn't mean you're a bad person. But what brought you to those drugs to help you forget? And that's what's happening. They're forgetting. They're wanting to not think about the things that have hurt them in their past. And I think it's important that we treat everyone on the same level, show them the same kind of love no matter what, because we are called to love each other, not hate, not look at somebody different because of the way they look on the outside. We are called to love everybody. And if that can just take root in our communities, how much better and how much more successful would people like Tanu become? And how preventative would that love be to stop someone from going down those roads and stop bad things from happening in their lives? When we love each other, we don't hurt each other. And I just think it's important. It's an important thing that we validate people and let them know that they are important. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you both about the diversion programs is because while the programs can kind of structurally create a setup where people can access programs, like work within the bureaucracy to access resources, kind of the unspoken key to success that you are both exemplifying is love and recognizing humanity and recognizing the whole person. And those are really hard to, programatize. And we really rely on mentors and people like Tanu willing to channel their lived experience to support others experiencing similar situations, to uplift folks who have traditionally not been or have been undervalued or kind of just abandoned by the systems we have in place. So thank you for saying all that. Tanu, I want to give you the last word. And I don't necessarily have a question, and I'm trying to think of one right now. I guess, I don't know. Is there anything I haven't asked about that you want to uplift?
I think so. I do want to say that throughout this whole ordeal, being in a program has not only brought structure to my life, but it has given me the opportunity to reconnect with my faith. And it has been pivotal for me and imperative for me to give all thanks and glory to God. It's something for me that has centered me and has continued to give meaning to my life. And if I can be that beacon of light for somebody else, I'm hoping that I'm shining joy and love and compassion from my higher power onto others. And I hope that we can continue to just be beacon of lights to each other.
Wonderful. Well, on my end, I just want to thank you both so much for talking with me and discussing, very emotional, real topics, and being willing to be so generous and open with your experiences and your hearts. I think your stories will have an impact, and excited for everyone to hear them. So I'm just really grateful for the generosity in you sharing. So thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
If you would like to learn more about how we support place-based initiatives for housing and economic development at LISC LA, please visit us online at www.lisc.org/Los Angeles and follow us on Twitter at LISC_LA.